YouTube Zico and the Goat House is back. And the NFL franchise tag window opens tomorrow the 20th and runs through March 5th. I'm here to talk about all the scenarios, all the candidates, my predictions, who will get tagged. We'll talk about the numbers. There's some misinformation out there about players that will be tagged, can be tagged. We're going to clear those things up. So a lot to go over in this video. We have videos like this predicting the offseason, everything in the NFL offseason on our channel, and more to come. Almost at 100K. Appreciate you guys if you support us and help us get there. Very important to follow us on Twitter this time of the year with all the news as well. Links in the comments for anything you're looking for. So it is early to predict because teams usually don't use that franchise tag window right when the window, or use that franchise tag on a player right when the window opens. They usually wait a little bit, buy themselves some time, work on extensions, negotiate, but feel pretty good about some of these takes and predictions here at this early stage. I definitely feel good about Antoine Winfield Jr., the safety from the Buccaneers. I do think they'll put the franchise tag on him. With any of these players, teams could extend before tagging so the tag doesn't happen, or they can tag, buy themselves more time, and then get an extension done. They have until July to do that. So it's possible, though, that extension with Winfield. I think it's a little tricky, though. But at the end of the day, I am predicting the tag, and then they'll work on an extension after they give him that tag. He won't hit free agency that way. But 16.2, and that's a projection as well. I'm predicting the franchise tag, and I'm projecting the number, but it should be around that range. If not exactly. But for safeties, it's expected to be 16.2 million. I think you'll get that. But it's a little tricky to work on the extension because, I think Winfield's going to be asking for much more than 16.2 million on a per year basis on an extension. I think the Bucs probably want to pay him around that 16.2 million, maybe around 17 million maximum. So it could be a little tricky that they could. I think 16.2 is pretty good for both sides, in my opinion, even though Winfield's going to be looking for a little bit more. So I could definitely see him playing on that tag at that number, while it could be a little tricky for the two sides to reach an agreement. It could definitely happen, but to reach an agreement on a long-term deal. But I am predicting Winfield to get that franchise tag and for it to be around 16.2 million. Next one, T. Higgins, the Bengals receiver. Franchise tag number should be around 20.6 million. I'm expecting it to happen. I've heard some rumors that T. Higgins may not want the tag. He's not going to be happy with the tag. I don't know if I agree with that. I'd be surprised with that. I think it's a pretty good number, 20.6. For him, I think it's pretty good for both sides. Honestly, get another 1-year deal. For T. Higgins, and kind of try to decide what you're going to do for the future on what he's worth long term. Then it's a pretty good number for T. Higgins himself. So I don't think it's bad for either side here, and that's why it makes some sense. Extension could be a little tricky because the Bengals probably wouldn't want to give him more than that number on a per year basis. Maybe he would want more than that. They're still trying to gauge, what other teams would value, for him, because he's had a really good quarterback. So it's a little tricky on the extension. So the franchise tag makes some sense. They could work on an extension. I heard tag and trade is a possibility as well. Could the Bengals tag him and then get something pretty valuable out of him? It's a possibility, but I'm expecting the tag for this one. The Bengals do. The tricky part with the tags that's the cap hit. Full 20.6 million. That's also the cap hit. It's not like it's a long-term deal where there's some guarantees and you can backload it. No, the franchise tag, it's a 1-year deal, fully guaranteed. That's the cap hit. So it is pretty large. The Bengals do have some cap space for this year, so that's the good thing. But I'm expecting that, and maybe they work on an extension where they can shift around that money a little bit, but that could be a little tricky as well. Another receiver, Michael Pittman Jr. with the Colts. Yeah, I think this is definitely one to watch out for a tag and then possibly an extension. I think they'll try to work on that. The Colts, drafted him, obviously. He's worked out very well. He played very well last year. He's kind of proven as their number one receiver, so they want him there long term. So this is definitely one where I think he'll be tagged, and then watch out for them to possibly work out an extension. But that 20.6 million number is pretty good for both sides. I think that's a pretty good number to help out both sides. Maybe do that for now. Colts See how he is with Anthony Richardson, see if Richardson can stay healthy, and then maybe it's not the end of the world if you work on an extension for a long-term extension in the future, not necessarily right away. So I'm expecting the tag there. I don't think they want him to hit free agency. Again, I think that number makes a lot of sense for the Colts and Michael Pittman Jr. For the Panthers and Brian Burns, I'm going to predict a tag here. They've been working on an extension for some time, and it just hasn't got done, and now they changed their staff completely in Carolina, so that kind of starts them back over at square one. Well, we could assume that. Maybe the new staff's like a little bit more on board on what Brian Burns wants, and maybe they get an extension done, there's no tag, or maybe there's a tag and there's an extension. But the way I look at it, it probably started back at square one. They're probably going to have to put the tag on him, which is a pretty good number a pretty high number at $22.7 million. While they kind of buys them some time, work on an extension. I heard he's a potential franchise tag and trade candidate. So the Panthers, who are a little short on draft picks because of the trade last year to go up and get Bryce Young, they don't have a first-round pick, and they're a team that needs more draft picks. But it's a team that it feels like they need Brian Burns as well. So, but if they want a boatload of draft picks, here's your piece. Here's an opportunity. So you tag him at 22.7. So you have the opportunity to tag and trade him. So that. We talked about T. Higgins tag and trade. I think if I had to say who's more likely to be tagged and traded, I'd say Brian Burns probably. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this is the ultimate tag and trade candidate here. But yeah, I just don't see them agreeing on an extension during this franchise tag window, like the window where they have to put the tag or not on player. So I do think he'll be tagged for that reason, and that will buy him some more time. They don't want him just to let him hit free agency, So I'm expecting that. Again, an extension could happen. We will see. Next, Justin Madubuike from the Ravens, who had a monster breakout season. He's a little tricky. This is a little tricky of a situation. Obviously, the Ravens want him back, as they should. By the way, the franchise tag I'm projecting to be around $20.9 million. So based off his year last year, you could say he's worth more than that. So that is a pretty good number. It's a big number. It's a large price, but it makes sense as a price for Justin Madubuike after his season or his talent level. He's young, getting better. He's important to the Ravens. But why I say it's tricky is because the Ravens are a little short on cap space right now. They're in the positive, but around $7 million, somewhere around there. And they have quite a few free agents. They want to get better too. They want to make this team more of a contender. They don't want to come up short in the AFC Championship game, so they want to spend a little bit too. And they don't have a lot of spending money, so the franchise tag, again, the tricky part of the franchise tag is the cap hit. The number you are seeing that they get paid for the franchise tag is the full cap hit all in 1 year. You can't restructure that. You can't void year that deal. It's not a long-term deal where you can backload it. It's fully guaranteed. That is the cap hit. So if they take a 20.9, again, roughly cap hit, they're not going to be able to do a whole lot else. So that is really tricky. So when you put it that way, it's like, all right, they almost have to do an extension. And I kind of want that to be my prediction. I think they tag him, buy themselves some more time, and really push towards that extension. The reason, the positive to stay on the franchise tag where the negative is the extension is he had one really good year, and they lost their defensive coordinator. So if you extend on an extension, I'd project around he gets 21, 22, 23 million per year. So actually a little bit more than that tag. So if you extend him and pay him that much per year, and after you're not, seeing a second breakout year, without Mike McDonald, it's a little risky, so there is a lot of risk either way. And then could you just let him walk in enter free agency and maybe test the market, and then you can get him for cheaper? I don't think you get him for cheaper. I don't know if you can let that happen. So this is actually, I don't know if it's really a tough decision for the Ravens, so that they probably should tag him, and then they should really try to extend him on a pretty good deal, maybe backload that a little bit, but you can't overpay because again, he was pretty good before this past year that just ended, but man, it was a lot different. So, it's a little tricky for the Baltimore Ravens, but I am expecting them to try to keep him around. So therefore, a tag and work on an extension. Remember the situation with Lamar? They had last year, tag and work on an extension. I don't think it'd be that crazy, but so that's why it's not just, what we're learning over the years with these franchise tag or in this video. It's not just tag or not tag. Every player and every team has a different, unique situation. It feels like because of their financial situation for the most part. But then the Chiefs, I also think this one's a little tricky to predict. Actually, like Matabuke, it's not that tricky to predict. I think they'll do that, or they'll extend him, or tag and extend. But it's tricky for the Ravens. This is a little different. I think this is actually tricky to predict with the Chiefs and Levi Sneed, because the Chiefs, they haven't paid like giant contracts outside of Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. I mean, Tooney gets paid pretty good for a guard. Chris Jones, that they even underpaid. They're believers in what they do through the draft and building around Patrick Mahomes. They let Tyreek Hill go because they didn't want to pay him, and it was a major, major loss. But they're still winning Super Bowls. Think about that. And then you factor in they draft so well and they coach so well, specifically, I mean everywhere, but specifically at the cornerback position in the secondary. They just keep finding guys. Like Sneed was like, is he a safety? Is he a corner? He goes to the Chiefs. He ends up being a star corner. McDuffie, we knew was going to be good, but the Chiefs made him even better than expected. There. So basically, they are confident in who they can draft, and they're good at it. They're good at it. So where do they value Levi Sneed? The franchise tag would cost around $18.7 million. That is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Is he worth it? I think he's worth it because he's probably worth it because he's a really good corner. But again, that Spagnuolo defense, that Chiefs defense, they're very good at developing these young players and getting the most out of them. I like Levi Sneed elsewhere. Would he be good? I think so. Will he be as good? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say he's much better on the Chiefs than he is elsewhere. There's some other schemes that he'd probably be just as good. There's only a few. But again, I think he'd be good anywhere. And the Chiefs know that, so that kind of gives them some leverage. I think another team would break the bank, though. So it is a little tricky. $18.7 million is a lot. I'm one where, I like the cornerback position. I played it. I think it is extremely difficult to play. Extremely difficult. So by that logic, you can say they should be worth a lot of money. I understand it, but I think it's more so coaching in scheme than it is like finding star corners. We see how successful teams in the NFL, teams that go far into playoffs, teams that win the Super Bowl, it's more so because how they coach defensively, rather than having the big name players, in my opinion. So I wouldn't be one to spend crazy money on a corner. I would just trust my evaluations, in terms of prospects or cheaper guys. And that's what the Chiefs do. That's what the Chiefs believe in, actually. So they may go, that's why it's tough. They might go, we don't want to pay 18.7 in one single season on a corner. We just don't want to do it. They could try to extend him, but then you're paying him, and he's probably asking for more than that, believe it or not, on a per-year basis on an extension. The Chiefs may go, we don't really want to do that. We trust and this is a great player, and he's very valuable to us, but we just trust our evaluation, and being able to find a new Levi Sneed, because we do that. We're like that. So it's very tricky with this one. So they, believe it or not, they could let him walk. And the more I'm talking, I'm like, maybe they don't want to put that $18.7 million, but they do have a decent amount of cap space. They could afford to do this. They can have Levi Sneed for one more year. And then if they feel they can get pretty good value in extension, they do it. If it's, too much, they let him go. Hey, at least we had him for one more year to try to get another Super Bowl. So that was my thinking in the end, where they tag him. And they could extend him too. It's definitely, I'm not saying that's not going to happen. Maybe they get a pretty team-friendly deal. That's kind of the surprises of free agency in this time of the year, that there's some surprise contracts and numbers, and some teams are asking for crazy money, and some players end up taking a hometown discount or a team discount friendly deal. So we'll see, but this one is a little bit of a tricky one, I guess, for the Chiefs as well, but to predict. But I'm gonna say they tag them, and they're going to try to work on an extension. If it's a pretty good deal for the Chiefs and they do it, if not, then maybe their plan is just let's have him for one more year here. So it's an interesting one for sure. Then for another corner, Jaylen Johnson, I kind of got a specific prediction for this one, and I've kind of mentioned this for some other guys. Like I think Michael Pittman and the Colts will, a lot of guys, they'll try to work, they'll get tagged, and they'll really try to work on an extension, and it definitely could happen. I'm going to say this is what happens. I think the Bears will tag Jaylen Johnson. They've been working on an extension for some time. It just hasn't really happened. His name popped up at the deadline, but they're like, we don't want to trade him. He's too good. He's playing too well, and he did play well the whole season. He was arguably the best corner in football this season. He's had other good years, but it was really just one big breakout year. So I guess that makes it a little risky with how much do you pay him. But I think they're going to continue to work on that extension. I think it's going to take a little bit more time, though. So I think the Bears buy themselves some time by tagging him, and then so he can't become available, and then they work on that extension. I think it'll eventually get done based on what we're hearing from the Bears, like what Ryan Poles has said. They are very confident they're going to have Jaylen Johnson on the team, and maybe he's just on a one-year deal to tag. But and they could afford it. Like if he's on the tag all year on the $18.7 million cap hit, they could afford it. They have a lot of cap space. But I'm going to say they tag him. They really push for that extension while he's on the tag. So that'd be my prediction for Jaylen Johnson. Again, my thinking, my philosophy with corners, I wouldn't be paying corners around this range unless they are like sure thing they're going to be elite every single year. That's just kind of just me. I think it's mainly coaching. So you do have, like with the Chiefs, with the Bears, they do in other teams, if they're trying to sign those guys, you do have to be careful not overspending on corners, just how it is. Even though it is an important position, it's just how it is these days. And I have the same situation for Josh Allen, tag. And then I think they'll really push for an extension. And I would imagine they get that done. They like Josh Allen a lot. He was very productive for them last year. $22.7 million is a pretty good price for them and not bad for Josh Allen. So they play it safe. Let's put the tag on him. And the Jaguars are kind of known to do that. They put the tag on the guy, and they really try to work on the extension. If they can't, then hey, we got him on the tag. If we can work an extension, that's great too. So definitely expecting the tag on this one. Or unless they get an extension done before they have to put a tag on him. That's also possible. That's also very possible. But a tag and extension is really what I'm expecting here for the Jags and Josh Allen, who was a star pass rusher for them last year. And then one more prediction, but there's a lot more to talk about after. But Christian Wilkins, another tricky situation. The Dolphins star defensive tackle. A tag would pay around that $20.9 million, just like Justin Matabuke. That tag for the interior defensive lineman. The Dolphins are pretty far in the negative, like in the red when it comes to cap space. There's ways to work themselves out. They will, and there's ways to clear cap, but it's not an ideal situation, obviously, to be in. So if Christian Wilkins is tagged, it is a $20.9 million one-year deal, fully guaranteed. So that is the cap hit. Again, maybe the downside of franchise tag. $20.9 million cap hit while you have negative 40 whatever in cap space right now. Of course, everybody's going to clear. Like teams that have to clear, they're going to get to zero. It's you have to make some not ideal decisions, but a team that's that far negative and you get to zero and then you take a negative 20.9 cap hit on this year alone from that, it's not ideal at all. You do not want that. The Dolphins do not want that. So bad scenario, they tag him. They just absolutely cannot agree on an extension, and they are stuck with a $20.9 million cap hit. That is a pretty brutal situation, but what's more of a brutal situation? Losing Christian Wilkins altogether, because he's one of your best players and very important to them and still has upside, still, could be with them for a long time, be great. So I view that as worse. So they really need an extension. I think this is one that an extension can come soon, and the tag does not happen because of that. Or we get to that March 5th tag deadline, and they're like, we have to put it on, and we do not want this guy to hit free agency, and we really have to push to agree on an extension. Maybe we have to, he's gained the leverage. Maybe we have to just side with him, what he wants. We overpay him a little bit, which would be a little bit over the $20.9 million, because they really want that extension. Why? Again, because the franchise tag, the number is the full cap hit that year. If you give him a 4-year deal on an extension, you can backload the shit out of that, you know, and his cap hit could be like $6 million in year one or something like that, you know. So that is what the Dolphins need. So it is a little tricky, because what if you get stuck on that tag, or what if they're too afraid to get stuck on that tag and they're like, we got to let him hit free agency and maybe we can get him back for cheaper because teams aren't offering as much as he expected. So maybe there's a little bit of a gamble there. So this is a tricky one. And all these, there's some similar, but all these franchise tag situations are different situations. And that's what makes it pretty interesting. But a lot more to talk about. I made the spreadsheet. So the guys in red are the guys we did not talk about yet. We're going to talk about them now. And they are legit franchise tag candidates. Actually, first I scroll over here to the right, and then up here, can I highlight this? Right here, can't or won't be tagged, and there's some misinformation out there from some people, and so we'll break that down. Had to move myself down on the camera a little bit, but Kirk Cousins, is not possible for him to be tagged. Remember, the Vikings restructured his deal, so they shifted money around, and then they have void years on his deal, so that is the clear money in the now. So that was, last year. But people don't realize there are negatives on that. And one negative is you can't franchise tag him now, which I don't know if they would have anyways, but his deal does not void until March 13th. That is after the window of the franchise tag closes. That's where the deadline's at. So they cannot. I see people putting Kirk Cousins as a franchise tag candidate. Nope, they can't tag him. Danielle Hunter, another Viking, same thing. They had to restructure his deal. They had to put void years on it. There's the negative on that. His year actually does not void until March 13th after that deadline, after that window. Derrick Henry, I don't think he'll be considered at all. I definitely don't think so. At 19, it ends up being $19 million for him. They bring in more of a pass first type coach. I just don't see it at all. So I don't think he's a candidate. Leonard Williams is all the way up to $36 million. Remember, he was getting tagged when he was younger on the Giants a bit. So it'd be for the Seahawks, it'd be at $36 million. That's just ridiculous. Mike Evans, great player, $28.4 million. It's way too much. It's way too much. So it won't be considered. And a little bit of a flaw, I think, with the NFL, with the franchise tag prices, the values, is linebacker. In the linebacker category, you have 3-4 outside linebackers. Those are edge rushers. Josh Allen and Brian Burns are considered that in their current teams. They're listed as linebackers, but are also off-ball linebackers. And we know the edge rushers are worth more than the off-ball linebackers like Patrick Queen and Frankie Lavu. But according to the franchise tag, they are worth the same. So that doesn't make any sense to me. So Patrick Queen and Frankie Lavu, it would cost $22.7 million. Great linebackers, really good seasons. They are not worth edge rusher money. Not even close. It's just how it is. So these guys, some people out there may tell you they're franchise tag candidates. I'm going to tell you no right now. And, I know no for a couple of them, obviously, that we talked about. And then going back over to my right here, I don't think I need to, we can highlight it. Baker. Well, first off, I think it's more so going to be Antoine Winfield. Every team has one franchise tag in offseason, so there's that. And I think both sides will want an extension. Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. You want to mess around with a one-year deal in the quarterback. Maybe you get him cheaper on an extension. But mainly, obviously the quarterback could be happier with a non-one-year deal, be a little safer. What if he gets hurt and, what if he doesn't play as good? Kind of goes back to playing on what he was before last year. He'd rather have the money on the extension, but it's a lot safer for the Bucs too, because the team can structure the guarantees. They can structure the entire contract, so you can pick how they can agree on how much is guaranteed. With the franchise tag, if he got tagged at $36.2 million, the full thing is guaranteed. They're out $36.2 million. It just, you'd rather be safer with a guy like Baker Mayfield there. Kyle Duggar, which I think is an underrated safety, I think he's very good. It would cost $16.2 million. That's one, I think they really like Duggar there. I could actually see it. The transition tag is a little cheaper, and that's because you don't get any picks back if somebody signs him. But then at least you kind of have him possibly for that 13. It's cheaper, $13.9 million. I think it's a possibility for the Patriots to transition tag him That 13.9 million, because again, it's cheaper. But 16.2, the Patriots could do that too, but I think they would rather try to get him back for cheaper, or maybe let him walk. A few running backs, Saquon Barkley, 11.3 million. I think that actually makes sense. I think that would actually make sense, in my opinion, for both sides. But Barkley doesn't want that. He believes he's worth more. I know he has the talent level. It's just what running backs get paid, and he does have some durability issues, and running backs really aren't going to decide a team's fate at the end of the year. So I think it would make sense, but because Barkley is going to show frustration with that, I don't think it's going to happen. Josh Jacobs, there was frustration last year. They looked pretty good still without him. I just don't see it for either parties. Not that the player really has much of a choice if the team slaps the tag on him anyways, but I'd put extension would be cheaper, but I think he ends up on a different team last year, if I'm being honest. And Tony Pollard, I think it's too much money. He's a good back. Cowboys are in the hole a little bit. I don't think they can afford an $11.3 million cap hit on 1 year from a running back. They try to work on an extension that, maybe it's around that price or more expensive, but in terms of the cap hit right now, I think it'd be a little bit cheaper. Then Chris Jones, with his situation, ends up being a $32.1 million cap hit. Now, the guy's one of the very best players in football, so I guess you could honestly say maybe it's not too far off. Is he worth that? But that's a $32.1 million cap hit in 1 season. You almost put him in the won't be tagged category. Don't even entertain it, but he's such a good player that, and people will talk about it, so I threw in this category. And Xavier McKinney probably should have been listed next to Kyle Duggar, another safety. It's the same price. I think it's a little rich. Transition tag is possible, $13.9 million. Giants, he worked so well in Martindale's defense, and they get Shane Bowen, so maybe they don't know. So having him on a 1-year deal could be good. 16.2 is just too much. The transition, again, is possible. So it's a tricky situation there. So those are guys that are legitimate candidates for the most part. The running backs could be a little tricky. The safeties are interesting. I really don't think Baker or Chris Jones get tagged. But the safeties and running backs are kind of interesting. And then I have 9 guys getting tagged or possibly getting tagged. At the end of the day, probably not all 9 get tagged. Well, I am predicting some guys to maybe get extended before, so that would mean no tag, or guys to get tagged and then extended. So if you get extended after the tag gets wiped away. Tag gets wiped away there. We saw the situations of Saquon Barkley and those Josh Jacobs last year. It was like an adjustment to they kind of did away with the tag, but made a 1-year deal where it's like the same. It's almost the same thing, but there's some incentives. So any type of deal like that or an extension wipes away the tag. But that's sometimes teams just, all right, let's buy some more time. Let's slap the tag on that guy. Let's work on an extension. We got more time. He won't hit free agency. We don't have to worry. But there's some situations like, I think like the Dolphins one, Christian Wilkins, I think it's very interesting. It's pretty tough, if they can't get him off the tag. They don't want to they don't want to keep him on the tag, but they also don't want to lose him. So it's a little bit of a gamble in there somewhere with that. But so every situation is different. That's why I find this so intriguing. And but this year usually people I see other people on Twitter and see articles, they talk about these things, and I usually agree with people or that like their takes, even if I don't agree. But this year I see a lot of people talking about Kirk Cousins being tagged and Danielle Hunter and Leonard Williams, and the Vikings guys can't be tagged. Leonard Williams costs around $36 million, ballpark. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I was glad to get this video out here. I was going to wait a little bit to get, because it's a little early to make these predictions, but I really wanted to get this information out here right now. So hopefully this helped you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Always talking with you guys on Twitter about these things. I already kind of did that. I don't know if you can't really see that. But yeah, I already kind of have this information out there on Twitter. Here we go. News like that, my takes. Anytime breaking news happens, I report it and I talk about it. So good reason to follow that. Links pinned in the comments for that, and our sponsors, GLD Shop, Liquid IV, code GOATS on those. A lot of these videos up, a lot of informing videos up, more to come. So join us. It's going to do it though. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.